Imagine you did everything right. You studied hard. You got the degree. You sent out the applications, survived the interviews, negotiated the offer. You got the job. A real one. With a salary, benefits, maybe even a bonus structure. Your parents were proud. Your friends were impressed. Your LinkedIn said, "Excited to announce." And then, quietly, without anyone telling you, the trap closed. Not with a slam, not with a warning, just a slow, invisible tightening. The kind you don't notice until you've been in it for 5, 8, 12 years, and you look up one day and realize you are running as fast as you've ever run, and you are staying completely still. This video is about that trap. It has a formal name in economics. It has roots that go back over a century. It is baked into the architecture of how modern salaries work, how companies think about you, and how the tax system is quietly tilted against people who do exactly what society told them to do. It's not a conspiracy. That's the worst part. But nobody had to design it to hurt you. It emerged naturally from 100 small decisions made by 100 different systems, and together they created something that functions almost perfectly like a scam. We're going to break all of it down today. No jargon. No motivational detour. No, just invest in index funds advice halfway through. Just the honest, slightly uncomfortable math of what a salary actually is and what it isn't. Stay with me. Let's start with a number. $47,000. That's roughly the median individual income in the United States as of the mid-2020s. In India, adjust for purchasing power, and you're looking at somewhere between 6 and 10 lakh rupees annually for a white-collar professional in a Tier 1 city. In the UK, it's around £32,000. The number changes. The structure doesn't. Because here's what's interesting about that number. Whatever it is in your currency, in your country, the moment you agree to it, you've agreed to something far larger than the number itself. You've agreed to a framework. A set of rules. A game with specific mechanics. And the first mechanic of that game is this. Your income is capped the moment you sign. Think about that for a second. For a second. In what other area of life do we agree upfront to a maximum? You don't buy a house and say, "I agree this house can never be worth more than what I paid." You don't start a business and say, "I agree this can only generate what I projected in year 1. But when you take a salary, a fixed annual number, you have functionally agreed that for the next 12 months, no matter what you produce, no matter how much value you create, no matter how brilliant your work turns out to be, you will receive exactly this amount. Not a rupee more. Not a pound more. Not a dollar more. The company has no such cap. If you're a software engineer and your feature launches and generates 20 million in revenue, you get your salary. If you're a salesperson and you close the biggest deal in company history, you get your salary. And maybe a commission that represents a fraction of what you generated. If you're in operations and your efficiency improvements save the company $2 million a year, you get your salary, and possibly a year-end bonus that amounts to less than 2% of what you saved. This isn't a bug. This is the entire point. The salary is, at its core, a risk transfer mechanism. The company is saying, we will bear the uncertainty of the market, the volatility of demand, the chaos of competition, and in exchange for taking that uncertainty off your hands, you agree to accept a fixed share of the potential outcome. That sounds fair. Almost generous, actually. Except it isn't, because the share you agreed to is almost never calibrated to the actual risk being transferred. It's calibrated to what the market will accept, which is a very different thing. To understand how we got here, you have to go back. Not all the way to ancient history, just to the late 1800s, to the rise of the industrial corporation. Before the salary was widespread, most people were paid for output. Farmers got paid for crops. Craftsmen got paid for goods. Merchants got paid for sales. The relationship between effort, output, and income was direct, visible, touch. Even when it was exploitative, and it often was, at least you could see it. Then came the factory. Then came the railroad. Then came the corporation. These vast, complex organisms that needed thousands of people doing specialized tasks that couldn't easily be measured by output alone. How do you pay a bookkeeper by output? How do you pay a manager by output? How do you pay someone whose job is coordination, communication, oversight? You pay them a salary, a fixed, predictable amount per unit of time. And in the beginning, there was logic to this. It created stability. Workers knew what they'd earn. Employers could forecast labor costs. The whole industrial machine ran more smoothly when compensation was predictable. But then, something shifted. Slowly. Over decades. The salary stopped being a practical solution to a measurement problem and became something else entirely. It became the default, the normal, the expected path. It became, to use a word economists love, the equilibrium, the resting state that everything drifted toward, regardless of whether it made sense. By the mid-20th century, the salary was no longer just how large companies compensated specialized workers. It was how everyone thought about income. It was the goal, the marker of adulthood and stability, the thing you aspired to if you grew up without money, and the thing you optimized for if you had ambition. And simultaneously, quietly, through legislation, through tax code, through the architecture of social systems, the entire infrastructure of modern economies began to be built around the salaried worker as the default unit, which is exactly when the trap started. Because once you build a tax system optimized to extract from salaried income, once you build health insurance and pension and credit scoring systems all anchored to stable employment, once you build an entire culture that equates salary with success, you've made it very, very expensive to exist outside of that system. The trap isn't that the salary is bad. The trap is that everything else was designed to punish you for not having one, even as the salary itself quietly fails to deliver what it promised. Let's do some arithmetic. The kind they don't do in the orientation session. You're offered a salary of, say, $100,000. Sounds good. Round number. Serious money. First, the taxman arrives. In the US, you're in the 22 to 24% federal bracket. Add state tax. Depending on where you live, that's another 0 to 13%. Add Social Security. Add Medicare. Add any local taxes. You're walking out with somewhere between $62,000 and $72,000 before you've spent a single cent. Now, inflation. If inflation runs at 4%, and in the mid-2020s, it ran considerably higher than that, your purchasing power erodes by 4% every year your salary doesn't increase. Over 5 years, if your salary grows by 2% annually, but inflation runs at 4%, you have lost ground. You are, in real terms, earning less money than when you started. But your paycheck still says $100,000. It still looks like the same number. The loss is invisible. This is called the money illusion. Economists have known about it for a century. Your salary looks stable. Your salary feels stable. Your salary is, in real terms, quietly declining. Now, lifestyle inflation. You got the job. You moved to the city where the job is, because that's where the jobs are. The city is expensive. Rent is 40% of your take-home. You need a car or a train pass. You need work clothes. You need to eat near the office. You need a phone plan that works. You need, eventually, the other things that salaried professionals in cities tend to need: childcare, private school considerations, the neighborhood with the good schools, the apartment with the shorter commute. None of this is frivolous. Most of it is rational. But together, it creates a cost structure that rises in near-perfect lockstep with your income, which means that as your salary grows, your mandatory expenses grow with it, and the gap between what you earn and what you can actually accumulate stays roughly constant. The economists call this the hedonic treadmill. You make more. You spend more. You feel about the same. You stay in the same place. And then there's the final mechanism, the one people talk about least, because it sounds almost too cynical to be true. Salary compression. Here's how it works. You join a company at a salary that reflects the market at the moment of your hiring. You perform well. You get raises. 3%, why? 4%, maybe 5% in a great year. Over 4 years, your salary has grown by, let's say, 15%. Meanwhile, the market for your skills has grown by 30%. New hires coming in are being offered salaries 15% higher than yours because the market moved and they're negotiating to market rate. You, the loyal employee, the proven performer, the person they know and trust, you are being paid significantly less than someone who just walked in the door. This is not a rumor. HR departments know this. Compensation analysts write reports about it. The polite term is internal equity compression. The honest term is loyalty is being financially penalized. And the solution, discovered by basically every salaried professional who's done the math, is to leave. To get a new job. To reset to market rate. To be the new hire at another company. And then do it again in 3 or 4 years. Which means the entire incentive structure of the salary system rewards disloyalty and punishes commitment. The very thing the system claims to offer, stability, a long-term relationship between worker and company, is the thing it economically disincentivizes most strongly. Let that land for a moment. Now let's talk about the part that keeps people in. The benefits. Healthcare. Pension contributions. Paid leave. Stability. Predictability. The feeling of being covered. These are real. Don't let anyone tell you they're not. In countries without universal healthcare, employer-sponsored coverage is not a perk, it's a survival mechanism. The pension match, the 401k contribution, the provident fund, these are real money. Real wealth being built. But here's the thing nobody puts in the PowerPoint during onboarding. These benefits are compensation. They are part of your total remuneration. They are not a gift from a generous employer who likes you. They are a calculated part of the package, often structured specifically to increase what economists call switching costs. The cost, financial and logistical, of leaving. The health insurance you'd lose. The pension vesting schedule that traps you for another 2 years. The stock options that cliff in 18 months. Each of these is a real benefit. Each of these is also a chain. Both things are true simultaneously, and most people only see one of them. There's a term in behavioral economics called golden handcuffs. It describes the phenomenon of compensation structures specifically designed to make leaving expensive. Not painful in a punitive way. Just expensive enough, inconvenient enough, risky enough, that most people decide it's not worth it. And when you combine golden handcuffs with salary compression, with lifestyle inflation, with a tax system that hits your income before you can even decide what to do with it, with a culture that equates the job title and the company name with your identity and your social standing, what you've built is a structure from which exit feels impossible, even when staying is slowly failing you. That's the trap. Not a villain, not a conspiracy, just a convergence of incentives, each one logical on its own, that together create something that functions like a cage with very comfortable furniture. So what's on the other side of the wall? This is where the conversation usually goes sideways, where someone brings up entrepreneurship and drops a quote about risk and reward, or tells you to buy real estate, or suggests you start a content channel. We're not going to do that. Instead, let's just look at the math on the other side, dispassionately, without cheerleading. Capital income, money made from owning things rather than doing things, is taxed differently in almost every developed economy. In the United States, long-term capital gains are taxed at a maximum of 20%. Salaried income, at the same wealth level, is taxed at 37%. In the UK, capital gains rates top out at 28%. Income tax tops out at 45%. In India, long-term capital gains from equities are taxed at 10% over the threshold. Salary income in the highest bracket sits at 30%. The person who makes $100,000 working is taxed more than the person who makes $100,000 owning. In almost every country. Almost universally. This is not an accident. It is policy. It reflects a deliberate set of choices made over decades by legislators who, and this is the irony, were themselves largely salaried before entering politics. The argument in favor of lower capital gains taxes is that capital is mobile, that investment needs to be incentivized, that the money was already taxed when it was earned and invested. These are real arguments. Economists debate them seriously. But the net effect, whatever the intent, is a system where the primary income type of the wealthy is taxed at a lower rate than the primary income type of the working professional. Where climbing the salary ladder toward financial independence is in some ways structurally harder than starting from capital in the first place. It is, when you look at it directly, a fairly remarkable situation. The people most invested in the salary system, the ones who followed every instruction, did everything right, built their lives around the employment economy, are the ones the tax code treats with the least generosity. And the most remarkable part, most of them don't know it. Step back, way back. We are living through the longest bull run in the history of asset prices. From roughly 2009 to 2022, with intermissions, global stocks and real estate appreciated at rates that had no historical precedent. People who owned assets got dramatically wealthier. People who earned salaries and spent them, more or less, did not. The result is a divergence. Not just between rich and poor in the traditional sense, but between those whose primary income comes from capital and those whose primary income comes from labor. Between owners and earners. And this divergence has a feedback loop. Asset owners accumulate wealth. Wealth generates income that is taxed lightly. Lightly taxed income compounds. Compounded wealth buys more assets. More assets generate more lightly taxed income. Repeat for 30 years. Meanwhile, the salary earner's income is taxed heavily, arrives in a paycheck, mostly gets absorbed by a cost structure calibrated to the salary itself, and compounds, if at all, in a retirement account that is subject to its own set of rules and restrictions. The gap between these two trajectories over a lifetime is not small. It is not a matter of lifestyle choices or spending discipline. It is structural. It is baked in. And it is growing. The uncomfortable question, the one that economic data increasingly forces you to ask, is whether the salary trap is a feature or a bug. Whether the system is failing to deliver what it promised, or whether what it promised was never quite what it delivered. Whether the dream of the good job with the good salary and the steady climb was always for most people a way of staying useful to a system that had different dreams for itself. The salary is not a scam in the way that a Ponzi scheme is a scam. Nobody is lying to you, precisely. Nobody is taking your money and laughing on a yacht, or not only that. It's subtler than that. And subtler is more durable. The salary is a contract that was sold as security and functions, over time, as a ceiling. It was sold as a reward for merit and operates, structurally, as a compression of upside. It was sold as the culmination of effort. Do the work, get the grade, earn the salary, and what it actually delivers is a seat inside a machine that grows wealthier than you do, using your labor as its primary fuel. And the deepest part of the trap is not economic. It is psychological. Because when the system fails you, when the raises don't come, when the promotion goes to someone else, when inflation quietly eats your purchasing power, when you're 52, and you've been at this for 25 years, and you're not sure you're meaningfully ahead of where you started, the first thing most people conclude is that they did something wrong. Not that the system has inherent limits, not that the math was always skewed, but that they, personally, failed to execute a game that was, in fact, entirely fair. That conclusion, private, quiet, devastating, is the final mechanism of the trap, the part that keeps it running without complaint. The part that means most people never ask the question we just spent 30 minutes asking. So here is the question to take with you. Not, how do I escape the salary? That's too simple and too individual. The real question is, if everyone who followed the rules is running this hard, and the math still doesn't work. What, exactly, are the rules for? Think about it.